Hello, welcome back to Outmouse Labs. My name's Penny, and I'm glad you're here. Today we're going to continue on with our Tic-80 tutorial series, and we're going to kind of get into the first part where we're actually using the engine itself. So, I am on tic80.com under the Create tab, and this is where you can kind of play with Tic-80 in your browser. You can also download the latest version, and it supports a number of platforms. Or you can purchase the Pro version on itch for $10. Now that's what I will be using as the Pro version. I think it is well worth it. Critically, you can export as a text document, so as a source code document. And also you can export your finished product without the editor, which makes it smaller, which can be nice. All right, so I'm not going to go over installing it. I think most people know how to install things for their operating system of choice, but this is where you can get it. All right, once you download it, when you first load it up, it's probably going to look like this, something very close to it. And I'm just going to maximize it so that you can read it a little bit better. First thing we're going to do is start setting up our environment. And this video is going to be for our sort of project setup. So if you type ls, which is short for list, you're going to get your file system. It'll look a little bit different from mine, as it'll probably just have tic80.com. And for our project, we're going to create a directory or folder. So to do that, we're going to type mkdir, to short for make directory, and then a name. I'm going to call it, let's just say YouTube Toot. All right. It's going to tell us it's created that folder. Then I'm going to do ct and type y and hit tab. cd is short for change directory. You start typing out the name and you hit tab and it finishes it for you. Hit enter, and we're now in that directory. We had ls. There's nothing in here. All right, so next we're going to create our game. So if you hit escape at this point, it's going to bring you into the editor. By default, there is already a sort of very basic skeleton of a Lua-based project. Now, if you wanted, you could type the word new and then any language that it supports. So for instance, you could do new Ruby or new Moon for MoonScript. Now, I am going to be using Lua in this tutorial series, so the default one is fine. So I'm just going to save. If you just put save and a name, so we'll say YT, it's going to save it as yt.tic. That's a binary file, and if you're going to be using the free version, that's exactly what you want to do. Now I am going to be using the Pro version, so I'm actually going to say .lua. So it saves it as a text file or source code file. So we hit ls now. There it is. Okay. So if you're going to be using the editor in the free version, you're just going to hit escape and you're going to start typing right here. Your setup is done. If you are going to be using the Pro version and going to use an external editor, I'm going to show you how to do that now. If you are going with the free version, I will have timestamps below. Just skip to after the VS Code setup is done. All right, so for those of us who are still with me, go ahead and type the word folder, and it's going to open up your, sorry about that. It's going to open up your file system in whichever operating system you're using, and it's going to go to where you are. So for most people in Windows, it's going to be something like app data roaming, com.nest box.teak, tic80, and then the folder. I went ahead and just saved the tic80 folder to my quick launch, so I don't have to always go in and type in folder. But this is how you find it the first time. Once you're inside, you're going to go ahead and open up with your code editor choice. I'm going to be using VS Code, so it's just right click. But you could go into your terminal and type code star, or excuse me, code dot from that folder, however you want to do it. All right. Once you're in VS Code, there's a couple things we're going to do. Let me go ahead and make the screen a little bigger so you can see a little better. Okay. So first things first, go to the extensions. And the one you're going to want, you're going to type in Tic-80. And you want this one right here. It's Justin Wash's Tic-80 Pro -VS Code. Now, I already have it installed. Once you install it, you're going to go into its settings. And you're going to put wherever your tic80.exe is. In my case, it's in my user directory, apps, tic80, tic80.exe. So that'll allow you to run Tic80 directly from inside of here. Next up, you're probably going to want to go into File, Preferences, Keyboard Shortcuts, and again, search for Tic80. and set a key binding. To do that, you would double click here and then pick a combination and hit enter. I like Shift-Alt-T, so Shift-Alt-Teak. So once you're done with that, you can load up any Tic-80 valid source code directly from VS Code. So I'm going to go into yt.lua. I'm going to hit Shift, Alt, and T. It's going to think for a second, and it's going to load the cart. This is just that default cart, that skeleton that's always there. All right. This works great for quick testing. There's one more thing you might consider doing that I think is important, and I'll tell you why. That is, if you go to your search and you look for environment, edit the system environment, then you go to environment variables, and then you go to path, you hit edit. You want to add the folder that contains tic80.exe in your path. So you would hit new, browse, and go to there and hit OK. Right. Once that is done, you can do this. You can open up a terminal, new terminal, and you can type Tic-80 from anywhere in your system, and it'll bring up Tic-80. Now, why is that important? It's important because that down there is the console. So if, for instance, I will show you, if, for instance, you were to go here and you were to, at the end, put, actually we'll put it up here so it only does it once. You were to put trace hello world, right? And save it. Now, from your active Tic-80, you can go cd u22 load yt.lua. So now it's run. You can go in and look, and you can confirm that there's the trace right there. And now when you hit Control R to run, or type run, down here in the terminal, you see the trace hello world. This is great for debugging, and you don't get that when you use the extension to load it directly. It won't show those. Okay, so that's the complete setup for setting this up to work in VS Code, which is what I will be doing. Next up, I'm going to show you how to build out what I think is a really efficient way to bootstrap a project. And that'll be it for this video. Okay. All right, so now that we're all set up, we're going to go ahead and build out our game structure. So there are other ways to structure this, but this is the way I'm going to be doing it. And this is based on the first video in this series that talks about doing object-oriented with functions in Lua. So if you are using VS Code, you'll see that you have your metadata here. You have your sounds and visuals down here. In between is your code. You can go ahead and clear out the default skeleton code, and we're going to use this. So the first thing we're going to do is going to create a player class. So to do that, we have local, which means local to this file, function player with a capital P, a player with a lowercase p, which is a table, a function in that table that is update, which sends self via the colon. In that table it is draw, sends self via the colon, and then returns that table. Then we have a function for the game, local to this file, capital G, local to this function, lowercase g, table. Table has a function called init with self. Right now, all that does is it traces that the init happened to the console. We have a variable called self.t, which is short for time, so it starts at 0. And we create a player using the player class above, self.player equals player. Then we have a game update. In the game update, we say we want the time variable to be the time variable plus 1, 60 times a second. And we want to run the player update 60 times a second. Then we have a draw function for the game. Right now, all it does is run the player's draw function 60 times a second. We hit return game to return that table. Then we create a local instance of our game class, local lowercase g game equals game. We run game init outside of Tic, so it runs one time. We clear the screen to 0 60 times a second. We run the update and the draw 60 times a second. And then this is just to show that our game.t works, because this is animation code that's in the skeleton. And right now it's using game.t instead of a global t. If we go ahead and run this, which I'm going to do using the method I showed in the last section, which is to load up Tic-80, cd u22 load yt.lua, and then Control R, or you can type run. You can see that it runs. You can see that our animation is working using our game variable, class variable, and you can see in our console init fired. So that's our basic structure. In the next video, which should be in about 2 weeks, we will continue on and start building some controls for our player. All right, hopefully this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. Please consider liking and subscribing, and I hope you have fun with Lua. It's a wonderful language. All right, so there you go. I will post this file. I'm probably going to do a GitHub repository for this, and I'll link it below. All right, thank you so much, and have a lovely day.